Welcome back to another live episode of 2D game development with Unity. We are again going to learn together how to create a 2D game using the Unity game development tool along with Visual Studio. Just to recap on the first video, I showed how to download, where to locate Unity and download the Unity editor, and also where to get Visual Studio, the latest community edition of Visual Studio. So hopefully you both have the, not both, hopefully you have both of these installed and ready to go. So if you do want to follow along, you'll need to have the same versions as what I have. Now they have a 2018.1 beta of Unity that's on their website currently. It's being released this month, but I opted to install the 2017.4.0.f1, and hopefully you can see that in this video. That's the stable release. We're not really going to fool with any beta stuff right now. So these are the two versions that we're going to start with. Now in this video series, for this episode or session, what I want to do is explore some of the documentation and the tutorials that are available on Unity's website. So let me just open Microsoft Edge here. And we're going to go to www.unity3d.com. And you see they're pushing the 2018.1 beta in April. But anyways, at the very top on the navigation bar, we're going to click Learn. And we're going to scroll down a little bit. And they have a great set of resources here for learning to develop games in Unity. Some of these are actually courseware that requires payment, but we are using the personal edition of Unity, which is free, and we're going to use all the free tutorials and projects that they have right now. Once we get through all that, we get have maybe a dozen or so of these sessions under our belt, and we're feeling a little more confident in Unity and our ability to build 2D games and apps in Unity, then we'll look to maybe do a series that showcases using Unity Plus and some of the features that are in it that are not in personal. But for what we need to do for the learning purposes, personal is going to be fine. So if you just take a glance at that when you have time, you can check this site out anytime. So it's unity3d.com/learn. That'll take you to this page, and you can explore some of the stuff. The two areas that we're going to be using is the second panel here, which is tutorials and projects. I'm going to highlight it. It's free online tutorials and downloadable game kits. So we can learn with free game kits and tutorials from beginner to advanced. It should give us a pretty good kickstart in using Unity. The other thing we want to do is I want to point out this panel here for documentation. This is where you're going to access any of the Unity documentation. So if we need to get information about the components or reference or scripting using their API, we can access this here. So what I'm going to do is click to learn more on tutorials and projects, and I'm going to go ahead and add that as a favorite because I want to have these available and where I just quickly click to them without having to go to Unity every time. And so where I want to add it is on the favorites bar. Add. Boom. So let's go back. And also let's do the same with the documentation. We're going to click Learn More. And so on the left here, you'll see they have a nice, categorical listing of Unity's API features, documentation, based on what the topic you're trying to work on, whether it be 2D, graphics, physics, scripting, multiplayer network, audio, animation, timeline, etc., all that stuff down there. So you can also access it. If you look at these links on the left, they actually correspond to these graphical things here. So working in Unity 2D graphics, same thing in the same order, just whether you want to navigate it that way or through here. So I'm going to save that as well. they have a link here, switch to 2018.1b documentation. We're not going to use that. We're going to stay in the 2017.3 since we're using the 2017 version. So we want to click on the star here, add it to the favorites bar, and I guess the other thing I want to do is configure my favorites bar to always show in Edge. Let's see, I've never actually specifically done that on Edge because I'm not really an Edge user, but I'm trying to migrate to it from Google Chrome and Mozilla Firefox. So we'll go to settings and show the favorites bar. Here it is. This is probably it right here. Just hit on. And so there we go. So there it's showing show only icons on the favorites bar. All right, that's cool. That's a new feature. But I want the actual description. So so that's good. We're good to go there. We can close that. And so what I want to do is move up some of these. I'm going to drag them, drag it right here to the left of ICE 9. I've got a couple of Twitch links there. I play in an online clan. This is a sidebar from this online clan. We play a few games, but anyways, ICE 9 is the leader of our clan. If anyone is into FPS, MMO, Survivor games, our clan is recruiting. We play a few different games, but you can check that out at a later time if you're a gamer. Obviously you are. If you want to learn to play games, you have to be a gamer. That's the first thing I would recommend before you even dive into this. If you have never played a game before, you cannot dive into learning how to build a game if you've never played a game to see how it works. You need to play multiple games, multiple genres, different types of games, even if it is for 15, 20 minutes or 30 minutes of gameplay. You need to see what these games are offering, the features that are in it, what's common between games. Users tend to expect certain things. If you look at navigation, a lot of FPS games, they use the key on the keyboard. The A, W, S, D keys are your left. A is left, D is right, W is up, S is down or forward and backwards. So, and then Q and E is sometimes used for a lean back and forth. So there's some common keys that are mapped to similar control and navigation within a game. So you need to make sure when you're looking to develop a game like we're going to do, we're going to try to map everything as far as controls and navigation go to the common controls that are used currently in most games. So anyways, if you've never played a game before, the main point of that was go play games, spend a week playing games, and then come back to this. All right, so there's one other one I want to move, the user manual. We're going to pop that over here. Oh, come on now, why won't let me move it? Normally you can drag this stuff. What's going on? Let's see. I don't need this Google. Let's remove that. Delete. What else can we get rid of? The quad. This is some other business thing I was doing before. Let's get rid of that. Delete. Oh, I did move it. Wait, it did move. I'm sorry. Unity manual. And then learn modules. Let's just push that right there. Make those the main ones. Okay. So let's make sure those work. If we open another tab and click the manual. Okay, so the documentation loads. Let's open another tab. Click the learn. All right, so that's bringing us there. Okay. So now the documentation, just so you know, I'm not going to go through the documentation line by line or item by item and go through all this for you. A lot of that is for you to explore. Depending on where we are with these tutorials, if there is a certain thing that I want to learn more about, for example, um, how to move a 3D object in a 2D space. Um, because essentially with Unity, it's a 3D game development tool. And like I mentioned in the first video, um, you know, when we're doing a 2D game, we're basically going to just lock or disable the Z-axis, which is what's used for depth. So basically, when you're looking forward in like a FPS or type of game, it's 3D. It's the Z-axis that moves the objects forward and backward in the viewport. So we're going to focus on X and Y, which is left and right, up, down. But we're going to have, the goal. Let's say the tentative goal is to have a 3D kind of look. We'll have three-dimensional graphics in here, but they're only used in 2D space, if that makes sense. So, it's a stepping stone to get into the 3D graphics. So, we're going to start with tutorials. Let's go back to the Learn side. And essentially what I'd like to do, I'd like to go through, I'd really like to go through all these, but I think, and they have it by topic here, and there's two different ways it's categorized. Under topics here, I think a good starting point, to be honest with you, is the Unity interface and essentials. That's going to go through and teach us how to use Unity. So if we're going to build any kind of game, we need to learn the tool set before we move on to just trying to develop a game. We have to learn the tool set. We have to learn what its capabilities are. And also we'll be touching on the scripting and best practices. Those are the first three that I want to focus on. We may not do them all in this video here. I'm going to try to keep these sessions about an hour at most. Most training videos can be shorter or longer, but I'm trying to make this into, most people they can sit down for an hour if they want to learn and watch a 1 hour video at their pace. So if you're watching this live, obviously you're getting it as it comes, but you can pause it at any time. Right now I am, just so you know, if you're watching this right now, because of the poor quality of my Twitch stream, I'm actually recording the video locally. So on my hard drive, I'm doing a local recording, and when I post it live on Twitch, it's actually just a video that I've uploaded that's going to be playing, and I will be available and online while I'm playing that. So if anybody enters the chat and you have questions about what was going on, we can I can respond to those questions and answer stuff in a live format. But the videos are not edited; they're not going to be edited. What you see, when I stream that video, it's going to be exactly the way it was when I recorded it. I'm not cutting, editing, cropping stuff out. I want you to see exactly what, as we go through this step by step, everything. There's not going to be any shortcuts. You're not going to see, any workarounds and that kind of thing. We're going to do everything. You're going to see exactly what I do. So you're not going to miss out on anything. Sometimes people edit videos and clean them up and make them look good. This is a raw video that's going to be later played and streamed live on Twitch. And again, the reason I'm doing this is the quality comes out better. I can do HD quality locally on my computer, then I can push that video out to Twitch, and based on their bandwidth and whatever they allow me, I'll get a better final output for the quality of the stream that way. I don't have a YouTube yet. These videos are being encoded in a way that they're YouTube friendly and YouTube ready. So next thing I'm gonna do is set up a YouTube and post these videos there as well. So for people that maybe prefer YouTube over Twitch. But again, if you're on my Twitch watching, really trying to promote the Twitch channel and my Twitch channel and get viewers there and get people to interact and all that. So again, the goal of this is to do a 1 hour tutorial lesson. When I say a lesson, I'm not necessarily teaching you, because I'm learning as I go. So as I go through this, I'm learning, and at the same time, if you're paying attention, you're learning as well. But later on, when I play it live back, I would have already done it. So if you have questions about a certain thing that I'm doing or why I did it, I could at least hopefully by then have a good answer for you, because like I said, I am treading through the darkness here and trying to go through this documentation, and there's a lot to learn. You can see all these topics here that we're going to have to touch on. My goal is to go through all these. So the number that you see out here next to each one should indicate the number of videos that they have for these topics or lessons. So we're going to be going through that a lot. The interface and essentials, I like to go through all that. Scripting, we're going to have to dive into that, because scripting involves programming, learning how to code. I would recommend for anyone to really have a good grasp of scripting in general. And you're ambitious enough, pick up a book on beginner C#, or one of these books that will teach you C# in 30 days or 14 days, or actually they have one that's in 24 hours. You don't necessarily have to understand every single topic in there, but if you read through and glance through some of that, it's definitely going to help you. Because the syntax and the things that are in the C# language, just the format and the style of it when you code, is going to apply in here. Now, Unity has its own, C# objects and C# components, things they've developed. So, we're going to be using Unity-specific C# entities or objects and things like that. And so, if you understand the C# language and what I call the syntax, it's the syntax is the way things have to be typed out. It's in most cases, if you've ever researched any programming language, things kind of have to be done a certain way. There's a certain format to a programming statement or a line of code, or multiple lines of code if it's like a loop that could be on multiple lines, or some kind of nested if-then-else kind of condition, so or any conditional looping, that kind of stuff. So there's a certain way that things have to be done. So a good beginner book on C# would be great. At least read through I believe the first 5 chapters will give you a good understanding, but you really need to get up to something, get onto objects, methods, and classes, at least that far in any kind of C# book, to give you a good grasp of what's going on here. Anyway, I'll do my best to, describe exactly what's going on and help you understand any scripting code that I do as I encounter it and I progress through it. As I mentioned before, I have a little bit of experience in the C# programming language. I'm by no means an expert, but I have written some applications years ago in C#. Now, there have been new releases of the C# programming language. What I started, I think the one I used was either C# 3, 3.0, or 4, but I believe they're on roughly the equivalent of, I think it's C# 6 now, so, or even further. So I'm a couple of, say, iterations behind, and it's been about 5 years or so since I've done any C# programming. But I have enough knowledge of it to understand at least the syntax of the scripting. I still need to understand the Unity specific objects that they have, but I understand how to access values, properties, the methods, and things like that. It's just a matter of understanding their particular stuff they're providing. So again, we'll go through that as we come along. So initially, like I said, we're going to go through the interface and essentials, and let's click on that right now. Let's get started. Let's see what we have here. I didn't really keep track of when I started this video, but it's been at least 15 minutes, so um, it's, I'm going to try to stop in 45 so we keep it, like I said, at about an hour. I like to keep it under an hour. Okay, so interface and essentials. Everything you need to know know to get started using Unity, from basic concepts to extending the interface. And we probably won't really get into extending the interface. That's, to me, is an advanced topic when you're writing your own functionality that you're going to plug into Unity as an extension to their UI. You know, you might add additional features and things that they don't have. That's more of an advanced topic. They do provide that information. Um, but what I want to do is cover using the interface for sure, the essential Unity concepts, and I guess we'll go through it all because it looks like a lot of the stuff we're going to need, like game objects and components, prefabs, which are concept and usage. Um, it's a that and we're going to do these in order like they list because a lot of them are done in a certain way that makes sense and you can build upon it. So enough of me running my mouth too much. Let's get right into the interface overview. All right, so we're going to watch a little video here together. I'm not sure how long this video is. Let's hit play. And we'll go full screen on that so you can see it. All right, so that was wonderful there. So let's jump back to, actually let's go back. Okay, so that was our interface and essentials video interface overview. That's what we just watched. And let's go ahead and launch our Unity here. And we'll take a look at the interface. I'm going to make sure that my interface matches what was in that video. Again, I don't know how often they update the videos, or if it's an older one. It said it was for 5.5. I don't know how that corresponds to the program because it's 2017.4.0F1 and they got a 2018 version. So I think they just started with the naming of using the year in the version number. The version I downloaded a while back, I think, was like 5.4, and there was a 5.5 getting released. It was going back like 3 years ago or so. So I think obviously recently they started with the year. They started getting so many new features and changes and updates to this game development toolset that they wanted to at least start tracking it by the year. And I guess the version numbers after that, 4.0, depending on, they start at .1 for each year and then it goes up. So anyway, so these are even some old projects I was playing around with before. So we're going to just do a new project. We'll click the new option. And this will be our 2D game development. And I'm going to just put Twitch out here since this is something that I'm actually doing on Twitch. And let's see, where is it going? Let's see the folder name. I'd like to check where it's going. It's going in Documents and Unity Projects would be the base folder. And so it'll probably create a folder for that called 2D Game Development Twitch. And so we'll use, this project file will be used throughout this entire series up until a certain point, and then we may create another one later on, but for now that'll be it. And the organization, if I did this professionally for a company or did contract work for different companies, or was contract that they would set me up in an organization, I'd have a different account that I would log into. But this is my personal account under one of my online gaming names. But anyways, it was something I had set up before. I just kept it. It was easier to keep that. And so let's see, what do we have? 3D, 2D, add asset. We're going to do 2D. Now they have an option where you can add different, it's called an asset package. And so an asset package is something that is pre-built. It's already included in Unity as it's a package of features that you can download, and assets, which are could be graphics, could be audio, sample audio files, or anything along that nature. But they're physical files. It's a package you can include. If we click that, you're going to get several that I've downloaded before. But some of these, if we're looking at, I'm looking for the essentials. Actually, is what I wanted. The Unity Essentials. Is it even in here? Okay, it must be included by default now. You used to have to select everything. I don't want any of those actually, so we're going to just select 2D and then click Create Project. So we're going to leave it at that. Start with a basic 2D project and let it load. We'll see what it includes as part of a base project. And so what I want to do is go over that interface again. We watched that quick video on the interface, the different areas. So we're going to go over that a second time, what all that means, or at least the way I interpret it. And so hopefully I'm not steering you in the wrong direction, but it's a pretty basic layout, common layout that I've seen in some other apps out there. Like for example, if you use Photoshop, I mean, you can work with layers and things like that. You also have your viewport where your content. You can set up multiple layers. There's a separate panel for that on the right, and then when you click an item, you can see different values or properties of a certain graphic item within your like Photoshop scene, whatever you want to call that. So it all works. It's similar. It's not exactly the same, but once you've used some of these software packages out there that have somewhat of a, I don't want to say advanced UI, but a well-organized UI, you're going to see that they're going to start grouping things a certain way, and it makes it easy to move from one app to another. And especially in these creation tools, whether it be a game development tool set, a photo editing program, an audio program for creating sound. So we're just waiting for this to load now. I do have a little bit slower system. It does have 16 gigs of RAM. Have a older graphics card. We went over all this before, so I'm not going to reiterate, but it'll just take a minute. Next time I'll have it preloaded and ready to go, so we don't have to wait. All right, so you see it's loading now, and just so you know, that gray box that's off to the right there, I'll point my mouse at it, right in this area. That's my Twitch chat. So if something is typed out, it will show up and it'll overlay over what we're doing here, what's in the video. So I wanted to be able to capture that in the video, so if somebody more watching it at a later point, you'll see it. But actually, it don't even make sense right now. Because I'm not streaming it live while I'm capturing the chat. So I'll tell you what I'm going to do. Just bear with me one moment. I'm going to just turn that off altogether. Later on, when I can figure out how to get that quality really well in a live session, I will turn that back on. So I'm going to do that. That box will go away. We're done. Okay. So this is the basic UI. When you start a 2D app, this is what you see. And so I'm pointing at the scene up here. It says scene. So this whole section here that I'm running the mouse pointer around is a scene. That's where you're going to work with the various layers and objects within the game, components. Anything you see, you're going to see it visually. It'll be there where you can see it and work with it. And as you click on items, you'll see it here. Now, we have now this by default, you can see the hierarchy and project window. Instead of it being one on top of the other, it's actually in columns up from top to bottom. So I actually prefer to have it that way. I'm going to leave it that way. So we've got the main camera. That's what you see here. So the main camera, you have to have at least one camera in any Unity project. So without a camera, nothing's going to render to the screen when your application is ran, your game or application is ran. So the way Unity works is this camera is the special camera in that it's the main camera, which is the viewport of the end user that's running your app, or in the case when we're testing it, we're the end user. So if we did not have this camera down here in this game window, which is again a live preview of the game, what it's going to look like to an end user, without this camera, nothing would render down here. So we have to have a main camera. Oops, I didn't mean to do that. But if we right click on that, I just want to see what options we have here. Okay. So that's going to be our project. Now let's, this right at the top here, you see this little Unity logo here, and it says Untitled. Uh, this is the scene name right now. It's actually not titled at all. So this is considered a scene. You can have one or more scenes in your game, and then you almost always have multiple scenes. You're generally not going to have a single scene unless we're just doing some, like with us learning and going through something that's more experimental. We may just create one scene and try to figure out how to do something, and so we'll just do it in a single scene just to learn how to do that. For example, like if we wanted to just have using a third-person controller tied in with a 3D model of a player. Maybe we want to have him run and just see how he runs, or have him chase after an object, or pick up an item. We could just play around in a single scene and just kind of learn how to do that, which is primarily, I think, what we're going to be doing. But when you start building games, you start to organize things by scenes, and so a scene would have related content in it. For example, if you had with 2D games, typically you're going to have, I'm trying to think of a good 2D game that's out there. For example, everybody knows the Super Mario Brothers, or any of the Mario games in general that are considered what you call a side scroller or parallax scroller. They're basically 2D typically. They may scroll left to right with, the viewport only shows a portion of that entire, let's say start to finish of the map, but it moves left to right, and you can sometimes go up and down, but you don't go forward and back like depth-wise from your viewport. So, but anyways, the point I was trying to make is that typically in Mario, from when you're running a what we call level or whatever, from start to the end of the finish, that's considered, that would be one scene, for example. And when you get to the end, now when it switches to the next one, it's another scene. And I'm thinking it's Super Mario World on Nintendo 64 that has the one point where you get in the game, you see like kind of a map of all the different areas you can go to. That map itself, that where you have the little cities that interconnect, and you can click on them to move to the next one. That's like one scene in the game to show that. But when you click on that particular dot or that little icon to go into that area, that will launch another scene in the game, and everything related to that next level is done in a scene. So, so that's kind of how the scenes relate in a game. In a 3D world, open world, typically going to have a single scene that's exploring an entire open world. For example, in some of the games I play, but as an example, in any of the FPS games, you're going to have a setup screen where you can configure your options and all that. That's all part of a scene, which would include a UI, a user interface. You could also have, different things you can get into as you click on each menu. That might, bring you to another area, like a different mode of a game. That could be a different scene for each mode of the game. So we'll get more into that later as we learn. I don't know everything about it. I'm just telling you what my understanding of a scene and how how it's used within a game. So we'll explore the documentation to get any definitive answers on that if anything's questionable. So anyways, what we have is our hierarchy window, our project window, and this is where we have all our assets. You see the asset folder here is empty. There's nothing under it. One thing that's nice is as you add assets to here, which your assets could be materials, models, prefabs, or scripts. If you want to just filter or search by those, you can, and that's what's great up here is a search window to search. But the folder is empty is what it says. So there's our main camera. Gives you a camera preview, and if we were to hit play right now, you would see essentially just get this blue screen. It's actually running right now. That's all it is, blue screen. That's it. So let's stop that. All right, so we have our project window and our assets which show up here. And then we'll have some context, the inspector which shows up over here. This is showing services by default, but if I click on, there's another tab here, you can see, you can click inspector. And so that's what I was trying to get to before. I didn't realize it wasn't clicked. When you click untitled, that's again the scene name. So let's title that. Let's see if we can rename that scene. I don't see a rename option, so what I'm going to do is double click it. Oh, come on. I guess it was still in play mode. I didn't realize it. Okay, maybe you can't change that. Maybe you just got to do save scene as and give it a name and then rename. So let's do save scene as. And let's make sure 2D game development Twitch. Yep, so the scene is going to be included in our assets folder. And we're going to call this just our main scene. Let's keep it simple. Oh, yeah, it did rename it then. So now we have an asset called the main scene. And if we click on main camera, you'll see the inspector changes and it starts to show various information about the camera. Now every item, you'll notice as we go through this, every item in Unity, whether it be a scene, a model, a prefab, even a script, which a script is probably not going to really necessarily matter unless it uses it for a starting point. We'll have this transform component, and you'll see there's actually a little line here that separates different sections. You got the transform section, and it gives you the position of the camera. You have I don't know if you can see this if it's very dark, but there's an X, a Y, and a Z. And then you have a rotation X, Y, and Z, and a scale X, Y, and Z. And so, again, this is, like I said, a 3D tool, but we'll only be working with the X and Y. So you have some properties you can set, some values. 0, 0 is considered generally the origin of your world map, whether it be a 2D world map or 3D. If it was obviously in 3D, you're going to use the Z, so 0, 0, 0 would be the origin of a 3D world, and then 0, 0 for the 2D. And we'll keep it at that. I'm not going to explain any more than that. Rotation obviously has to do with, you have 360 degrees going back to rotation. You can rotate anything in 3D worlds or even 2D because we're using a 3D tool to do it. We can rotate a 2D object 360 degrees in the X direction, which is, I'm pointing here at the screen. This would be the X. And then we have the Y, which is up and down. And then you have the Z, which is depth. It goes further out, away. So and then you have a scale factor. Where you see right here, it's X, Y, and Z are 1. And that's kind of important. I don't have the information at my fingertips specifically, but when an item is scaled down to a factor of 1, which we see are X, Y, and Z, they use a term that's used in game development. It's normalized. It's a normalized object in either 2D or 3D space. So it's important to have everything normalized where it's down to a 1, because my understanding is when you're importing or exporting objects from other game development systems that are not Unity, and vice versa, by having everything normalized, and the de facto standard is that everything's scaled down to a factor of 1, that you can import and export objects and assets from one environment to another without having something be like way out of scale. For example, if I built a 3D model, animated model of a running horse, for example, but I built it on a scale factor of 100, and then I exported it into a system that was expecting a scale of one normal, which is normalized. Then when it got into their game, it would be scaled, a lot larger than everything that they had in their system that was already normalized to a scale of 1. Now, the scale of 1 doesn't mean that everything's going to be the same size. All it means is that whatever size that item should be, whatever its base size, let's put it that way, it gets scaled or normalized, and that's set to a value of 1. That becomes the normal or normalized for that object. So if you wanted to go in virtual height, for example, a person maybe 6 feet tall. If you represented that in a 3D world or 2D world, once you normalize it, the scale factor would be 1, but 1 means that he's 6 feet tall. So if you scaled him up to 2, he would go to 12 feet tall. Same with a dog. Let's say a dog is only 3 feet normally, and so you represent that where he looks in comparison to a person in a game, he would be 3 feet tall, but you normalize that object to a scale factor of 1 in the X, Y, and Z that represents the 3-foot size. Then if you doubled it to 2, then it would just scale up to 6 feet. So it would, and if you scaled the person, when they went from 6, they'd go to 12. Everything proportionately would scale up properly or scale down without having to do a lot of manual readjusting of sizes. And it would be a nightmare if you had hundreds of objects in your game that all had to be individually scaled. So once you get an object to its proper size, you normalize that size, and so it makes it easy to import, export objects and keep them in a reasonable size that will easily fit into your 3D or 2D world. So you can read up more on normalization later, and we'll even research that to make sure I didn't mess up on that. So anyways, I didn't mean to get sidetracked on that, but every object in Unity here will have a transform. You'll see as we add things, they'll all have a transform. And so now this camera has some additional settings, and we're going to need to get into some of this. See if we can hover over what we've got here. Viewport, X0, Y0, width is 1, height is 1. So the viewport is 1 to 1, so it's even scaled. That the viewport is a scale of 1, and what that means is, whatever screen resolution the user is at, a scale factor of 1 is equivalent when this app is running to whatever their screen size is. So so when you go to scale items, regardless of the resolution, everything would look proportionally the same. So that's important, because if you develop something that was static or specifically scaled to a certain resolution, if it wasn't normalized down to 1, that when the game engine renders it, it wouldn't scale it up or down properly to match the screen size, and that gets into some important things. So background, obviously I see that's where the blue color is coming from. I guess we could click that and you'll see it popped up, this little swatch. It's called the color swatch. But you can pick any color you want in there. You can set the values, red, green, blue. Generally the RGB, using an RGB system, you can go up to 255 on the numbers here. From 0 to 255, that's using 0 as a value. That gives you 256 reds, 256 greens, 256 blues, and when you blend them together, you get pretty much an infinite number of colors. You know, you're looking at the different combination of values, you know, 0 to 255 in each of those. And then you have A, which is your alpha channel. Your alpha channel is generally used for the transparency and all that. So right now it's defaulted to 0, and you can go to the extreme 255. So we'll see later how that works as we work through this. Like I said, I don't know a lot of this. I'm still getting myself comfortable with this. Culling mask, I'm really not sure. Okay, which layers the camera renders. That's what it's culling mask. Okay. So culling is a term meaning rendering. Which layers the camera renders, that's the culling mask. So right now it's set to everything. So the camera's going to render everything. But it's possible that I guess that if you didn't want the camera to render everything in the scene, you could have it just render certain things. Let's see what the options are. Yeah, so it's ignoring if you have UI components. Yeah, Unity has its own built-in UI components, things that we can use, built-in UI components for creating scoreboards and creating an options menu in the games and configuring different settings, or that kind of stuff. You could also use it for a HUD. When you're building a HUD for a game, that's done through a two-dimensional UI, and we'll get into that later. So water, ignore raycast, transparent effects, default, everything. So it's rendering everything basically. We're going to leave it at that, at the default. I don't really want to change that. And the projection, it says orthographic projection. Let's hover over that again. It showed something here for us. How the camera renders perspective. Now, perspective is the way you're viewing something. And so choose perspective to render the objects with perspective. Choose orthographic to render objects uniformly with no sense of perspective. Orthographic, from what I've read in the past, is going to be sort of like any of those top-down 3D looking games you've seen, like Diablo, and there's a lot of games that are like that. That's called orthographic when it's 3D, but it's the camera's in such a way that you're kind of, the camera's up, like, let's say over the shoulder, top right, whatever, in the air, and looking down. So, and perspective would be whatever, as we turn, it's like a FPS shooter is the way I think of perspective. You're in an FPS game looking in first person or even third person. No matter, when you move the camera is at the perspective of the user. So if you move up, you're looking up, you move down, left, right, and that's for 3D. So we're probably not going to use, we're kind of going to use orthographic, but we're going to lock down, like I said, to the X and Y. We're going to change some of that. It's not going to quite look orthographic. We're going to use a 2D, true 2D map or world in whatever game we work on. All right, so we have some other options here, which rendering path depth, target texture, occlusion culling, allow HDR, allow MSAA, allow dynamic resolution, target display, display 1. Apparently, let's see if I went display 2, what would that do? Okay, display 1 is there. I don't really have a display 2 in here because this is labeled display 2. But if I hit display 2, see, I guess you can render to multiple displays, and you can see that it supports up to 8 displays. Now, I haven't, again, I don't know why you would need 8 displays. I don't know if it has to do with, like, for example, people have a dual monitor setup. Maybe you could develop a game that's targeting the actual gameplay on display 1, but it has some kind of, interactive UI that is always shown on display 2. You know what I mean? I don't know. We're going to have to research that. It could be more of an internal display within the game. And we're going to have to research that. It could be, for example, display 1 is currently showing, but while display 1 is showing, there could be other scenes rendering on a virtual display that's in memory behind the scenes. You don't actually see it on the screen, but it's being rendered in the game in real time behind the scenes on a virtual display called display 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way up to 8. And then the game itself controls when it switches between scenes. It can quickly switch to, like, if it has scene 1 going on display 1, maybe it's building scene 2, which the user will eventually get to on display 2, and it can quickly switch to that display when it's ready to show. So again, I don't know, again, how we're going to use those, but I see that it supports some sort of 8 display setup, which no one has physically eight monitors. So I'm pretty sure it's more of a software display, like a virtual display. Almost like what we call, back in the early days when I was researching some stuff, it was like an off-screen buffer where you could, video buffer, where you could write or render your game scene. They used to use basically two virtual displays or buffers, and you'd have the active one the user, the player or the user would see. You have the off-screen one. So as per frame, basically draw out a frame and then show that to the user, and then it would have a second virtual display that you would draw that while the first display is being shown. And once you finish drawing that scene for the second frame of gameplay, you would then swap views. It would let the user see the second display and then it continued this process of reusing display 1 to build, frame 3, and then you would show that, and you build frame 4 on display 2, and keep flip-flopping back and forth, swapping displays, if you will, so that the user is only seeing one of the two displays, but only when it's fully rendered and it's ready to be presented behind the scenes. So, and that's something that happens when you're talking about FPS, frames per second. You're basically rendering a frame and then swapping. So in the old 2D games, that's kind of how it worked, to get a nice smooth animation. Otherwise, you would see a lot of screen flicker. If you ever back in the early days, had games that you saw that would flicker, even a Windows game, that you saw a lot of screen flicker, that was because they weren't using an off-screen display, or what we call a virtual buffer, to render the scene before they showed it to the user. So the user would literally see everything clear and redraw. It happens so quick, but you still get flicker. So to prevent the flicker, you'd use a technology called double buffering, or what we call a virtual buffer, which would be it's a background buffer to draw scenes. And so again, I'm not saying I know it all. I'm just applying what I already knew in the past to this. So yeah, this target display is going to be interesting to learn more about it. I guess we're getting close or short on our time. It's been about an hour. I did say I want to keep these about an hour, so I'm probably going to cut it here. Here's what I want to do to leave you off at this, because I already see it's going to take it's going to take a lot of time to actually watch these videos, as I go through this. So what I would like, and I'm going to change gears here a little bit. What I'm going to do is go through and watch some of these interface videos myself offline. I'm going to write down some notes of some things that I want to cover and go over with you. And so what I would recommend is, before this next video is released, take the time to go through this interface and essentials 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and watch the videos that they have. Go through each one. There's going to be 8 of them. And that'll give us a definite overview uh, of the Unity interface. I don't know how much of that I'll cover because some of that I'll be covering as I go. When I click, start adding game objects in here, we're obviously going to access the scene view, the game view, the hierarchy, project inspector. So I'm going to leave that. That's going to be like some information that you can read, or I'm sorry, not read, but watch on your own. I'm not going to replay videos that are already out there. What I want to do is get more into, when we get down to the essential Unity concepts, game objects and components. Some of that I'll spend more time on, these 4 right here. But we won't watch their videos. Again, I'm going to ask you to watch those on your own as well. So if you do want to learn this with me, go ahead and do that. What we're going to do before the next session, I'm going to personally watch all these videos, 1 through 8, under the Unity interface. And I'm also going to watch game objects and components and extract as much information out of that I can. And then I'm going to present that to you in a video, a 1-hour video on game objects and components, my interpretation of that, and we'll go from there. So we'll take it a step at a time. Again, this is just, we're in the learning process, learning about Unity and what a game object is, what the components are. Later on, get into prefabs, the concept and usage, and then tags, because they're important in a game in Unity. That's how you will be able to reference your game objects by a tag, which is essentially a name, a unique name. Sometimes the tags can be the same across objects because you're trying to group them. So anyways, and layers. Layers are important. Makes it easier to work with your scene if you have multiple layers. But it also, especially in a 2D game, think back on a parallax scrolling, side-scrolling type game. Think of the old classics or even the new ones. You'll always see like stuff in the background that maybe is moving at a different rate as you scroll back and forth or up and down than other things. And essentially it's built in layers. You'll have the back layer and you have these layers that'll come to the foreground. And sometimes the object or the item, whatever the user is controlling, whether it be a spaceship or a player or a little animal or whatever, it may or may not be the topmost layer. Because if you want to have like scenery in a 2D game that can be in front of the actual object the player is controlling, then you would maybe have it somewhere between the last layer and the first layer. So we'll get into that. We probably will not have more than 4 layers. I foresee, I'm envisioning this in my head, no more than 4 layers in a 2D game. It might be overkill for a beginner type thing. And it's probably not, I don't know if it's actually what the standard is, but I foresee 2 layers for the background that move at different rates to give it an effect, almost like when you're moving left to right, a 3D motion effect in the background. And then you'll have the 3rd layer being, the 4th and 3rd being that, the 2nd layer being from the foreground counting back. The 2nd layer would be the movement, the layer that the player would move in, and then the 1st layer would be for any objects or things that would be in front of the player that the player could maybe be hidden from view or whatever. So we'll get into that later. So 4 layers would be a basic 2D game for me. That's what I envision again. But again, we're in the learning stage. Let's forget about, I'm already planning something. Let's stick to the learning, going through, understanding what these are. And I may do at some point I'll do a live, I'm going to do a live session on Twitch because I really would like to go through the material live. And, if we have viewers that are asking questions, I want to be able to interact with them and, maybe they can help out. So help out with the material if they know something, picked up something I didn't. So it'd be great to get some interaction there. So let's end it at that. Again, go through Unity interface, interface essentials 1 through 8. We're really not going to cover that. That's kind of like groundwork you need to do just to work in the interface. And if you're not in it to actually learn this, you're just watching, well, you probably don't necessarily have to watch all that. If you don't want to, just watch the videos as I do them. But if there's, don't be asking me information about, any of these videos if you haven't watched them yourself. So, and then we'll cover game objects and components. So we'll see you back on the next session. I plan to do a session starting, let's see, today is actually Sunday. And if I get this posted tonight, I'd like to do during the week, Monday through Friday, I'd like to do a 1-hour session every evening. And I don't know if I'm going to be doing anything on the weekend, but the way my schedule is and the way things are, it makes it easier for me to do something at a certain time in the evening. And I'm not sure exactly the time, if it's going to be 6 p.m. Central Time or 7 p.m. or 8, but it's definitely going to be no sooner than 6 p.m. I think. But I don't want to do it too late where I start getting a little lazy toward the evenings and tired and I work during the day, so I have a long work day. I want to do it where I still have enough energy to do it. So we'll see you next time. I hope you all enjoyed this video and are excited as I am to learn Unity and eventually get to that point where we have some skills. We know how to use the tools here, and we've done a little bit of scripting, and we're starting to understand how these objects interact in both a 2D world for now. Later on, maybe a 3D, and we can actually start to build our first game. So bear with me during these first, like I said, it's probably going to be a dozen videos, I guess. We'll have, well, one on game objects, one on prefabs, tags, layers, and on these live sessions, I don't really know, what do we have here? Again, I'm getting into editor basics, game objects, Unity tips. These are like some other videos. Those are probably things that, these are live sessions in Unity interface. So I'm assuming these are things that you can watch on your own time as well, which I'll do. I'll pick up anything I can from those. And matter of fact, that may be a good, now that I look at it, since it ties back to the Unity interface and essentials, these are some live sessions on that. It may be a good idea to go through them 6 videos at your own pace as well. But again, the next video that we're focusing on is essential Unity concepts, game objects, and components. And again, this is the beginner stuff. And we'll move on from there. So until then, we will see you. Y'all take care. Have a good Sunday. Today is Sunday, April 8th. I'm stating that date so that it makes sure that I will commit to doing this. If I just say, hey, it's Sunday, you don't know if I'm doing it Monday the 9th or not if I never say what date today is. So my goal is to sit down and watch all these videos the rest of this afternoon. It is my time. It's 3:56 p.m., almost 4 p.m. Central Time. And so I'll be going through these videos and watching all this stuff and going through. I probably won't do the live sessions on Unity stuff. I'll do that later on because I think I just want to get through this first 8 and then jump into the game objects and components and really get a good understanding of that and put together some review material for tomorrow evening. Again, if you follow me on this on my channel, you'll be able to find out when I go live, and generally we'll start, pretty much right after I go live. I'll start. Maybe there'll be a 5-minute, I'll have a intro screen that'll show, but and I'll try to do that 5 minutes to the hour of whatever hour I'll start at. Again, once I confirm out a schedule and get on a regular schedule, I'll actually post it. Right now I don't know, what that's going to be, but like I said, 6 p.m. is my tentative time to start, but it could be later. And it may wind up being a 2-hour session, not 1 hour. Again, I don't know until I get into this. I tend to ramble on a lot, but I'll try to keep things concise and not repeat myself so much. So if I do that during any of the live sessions, just feel free to in a nice way, to tell me, that if I've already mentioned that, it's okay to move on, or sometimes I want to go over something and repeat it multiple times. Number one, to make sure, if you've never had any exposure to it, that you do understand it and you understand it well, because game development is not easy. It's going to take some time to learn this stuff. I know I'm going to need some time to learn it. So everyone learns at their own pace. And so at the end of each nightly session, if you really don't fully understand what we've went over, I highly encourage you to go back and review any of the videos they have online for that topic and watch at your own pace, and until you get it, because everything builds upon, one video builds upon the next, and each lesson goes to the next. So even though a lot of this is, I guess some of it may not be exactly that way, but most of it will. And it's important to understand really everything that we're going through. So that's the only way you're going to be a successful game developer, is to make sure that you learn all that and be disciplined and learn it to the best of your ability. Network with other people that are doing it. I'll try to answer any questions that I can as we go. I've mentioned that before, but also the viewers that are out there. Maybe, start a study group. If you see regular viewers that are in the chat as well, and you see people asking questions and all that, just pay attention to that. And we could also, I've got a Discord set up. And so what I'd like to do in the general channel, that's a text-only channel, text chat channel on my Discord, you could type some messages in there, and maybe we'll use that as a common place for questions to get answered by viewers, and so, I encourage another viewer to answer first, but I'll review that, and if I need to add something, or if nobody responds, in a timely manner, I'll definitely put my input in there when I see it. But maybe at some point, we could, if we get enough viewers and enough people interested, when we get into the actual game development, I definitely would maybe want to have a few of the viewers who have gone through this with me, who have a basic understanding of Unity and maybe a really good understanding of Unity, to maybe be involved in a small group, and we'll, the end goal is to build a team that could maybe build a simple game, 2D game. I'll build one as we go, but later on, if you all want to do a group project, that's something we can do. That would really help fuel the learning curve. It also make people maybe being more encouraged to get involved, and if you have other players, in a group, or other teams, let's say team members in a group here that will be involved in this, it'll just keep it going. That's the best way I learn, actually. Sometimes when I'm just trying to do this myself, I can get a little bit undisciplined, a little bit lazy, and maybe not do it. But I think I've committed in my mind to, to stay on this and go through this. So if I say that I'm going to do a certain thing, or I'll go over a certain, like I said, tomorrow's session is going to be game objects and components. So be prepared for that, and we'll go from there.